I've got sunshine on a cloudy day.
3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
On my own, here we go.
If you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror.
The communists declared that the real differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric.
It's MAGA country.
This is no hoax, ladies and gentlemen. I urge you to run for your lives while you can. We're not making this up just so we can take over the world.
The old dinosaur media isn't dying, it's dead. We are the new media. This is our world now. Lay down and die.
Peace was never an option.
So if we don't step up and win this culture war, then who the fuck will?
Let's wake the fuck up! We're gonna get naked.
No. I'm locked in here with you.
You're locked in here with me.
That's what you've been waiting for. Be the one we need.
Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Global industrial complex.
Yep. Uniparty.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
The point is to destroy Western civilization from within using Maoist technique. So therefore you have to vote for me.
I don't know. This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Hey.
Woke is Marxism, evolved to attack the West.
Stop giving up.
It's only just begun. Now!
Do it! Yes, you can!
I'm gonna do what's called a pro gamer move.
Just do it!
Are people bitching about that?
Some people.
Of course they are. Oh, fucking A. All right, got it. Yeah, too fucking bad.
All right.
Yeah.
Far left conspiracies, to be honest with you.
Ain't no single entity going to swoop in and save the day. You are going to be continuously let down if you place all of your hope into one individual. Instead, look inside and look around. We're doing this together.
We all are fighting for the same thing, and we all see the same problem.
It's time to stop being an NPC, get off your ass, and join the meme war.
Shame! Shame!
No, I don't like you.
Shame!
If we were in the wild, I would attack you.
I'm sick of it, man. I'm fucking sick of it. I will not do it again.
Thank you. I wonder how many people feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Be the beating drum at the head of the growing creative cavalry charge. Be vocal and profound in your passion for projects you enjoy.
No more excuses.
I've seen it. I can't even compute all of it. It's so fantastical. You've not seen nothing. You ain't heard nothing. You ain't smelled nothing like this. I don't have words to tell you.
A new world order.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Hey, wait a minute.
You control population, you destroy the family, and then you you sow division.
You don't need a destination when you're running on an omnidirectional treadmill.
Are we ready for a new world order?
You'll never defeat the human spirit. You'll never defeat God. You'll never win.
Pray that he is watching.
Against all the evil that hell can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce, we will send unto them only you.
On my own, here we go.
I'll do it myself.
Oh, I'm up already. That's what I get for not keeping track of how long the intro is. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America. Welcome to Castle Curmudgeon. where we join with woke Twitter in their condemnation of the sexist patriarchal conspiracy that resulted in the Barbie movie only getting 8 Oscar nominations. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the 4th week of January 2024. Dateline Denver, Monday, 22 January. According to a report from the Denver Post, that city's hospital system is teetering on the brink of collapse as waves of Joe Biden's illegal aliens arrive seeking medical treatment for which they have no means of paying. Denver Health CEO Donna Lynn stated that in 2023, 8,000 illegal aliens paid 20,000 visits to the city's hospital system, resulting in a sunk cost to local taxpayers of approximately $136 million. Ms. Lynn went on to say that unless these numbers are ameliorated in some way in 2024, the Denver hospital system, which is already being forced to turn away patients on a daily basis, will have to massively downsize its operations or shut down altogether. Reached for comment, White House Press Secretary Baghdad Buckwheat stated, quote, "We are a nation of immigrants. Diversity is our strength. Shut up, you filthy xenophobic racist. Rinse and repeat." End quote. Dateline New York City, Tuesday, 23 January. Hundreds of staffers from the useless woke bullshit publications Vogue, Vanity Fair, and Condé Nast staged a walkout on Tuesday amid an ongoing wave of layoffs among legacy publications that nobody's actually read for at least 20 years. The protesters could be heard chanting slogans like, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, corporate greed has got to go." Another such inane, meaningless bullshit in the apparent belief that refusing to go to work is a sensible response to potentially being laid off. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him. And hey, if chanting some inane bullshit slogans doesn't get the job done, well, then it's time to start suing some motherfuckers, right? And so the union, something called the News Guild of New York, has announced that it is initiating legal action against Condé Nast, stating, quote, "We do not agree with Condé Nast management's apparent plan to pad the company's bottom line by slashing staff. We remain ready and willing to bargain in good faith about layoffs and other worker concerns as part of a complete agreement," end quote. Because yes, that's the ticket. Reality isn't really reality. After all, these legacy publications aren't shedding staff because they are far beyond doomed and desperately trying to prolong their circling of the toilet bowl of cultural irrelevance. This is just evil rich bastards trying to pad their bottom line, which is probably also a fair description of the union leaders themselves. But this reporter digresses. Dateline Berlin, Wednesday, 24 January. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, a proud member of the Green Party and fully certified eco-warrior, had her 3-day diplomatic tour of East Africa interrupted this week due to a series of technical failures and mishaps with the carbon-belching Airbus 319 that functions as the German equivalent of our own Air Force One, which means, come on, shouldn't we call it Luftwaffe One, or is it too soon? No, it ain't too soon. For our purposes, we are just going to call it Luftwaffe One, and that's all there is to it. Anyway, Luftwaffe One had an unfortunate engine failure on Wednesday morning, after which Ms. Baerbock was forced to use a backup, the Airbus 321LR, also operated by the Luftwaffe, which they arranged as a hasty backup. But everything went fine after this little opening snafu, right? Well, no, not so much. It did not. You see, Ms. Baerbock was supposed to first fly to Djibouti, but to fly to Djibouti, you have to traverse the airspace of Eritrea. And the Eritreans said, fuck off. This isn't the plane you said you were flying when we cleared you to use our airspace. So you Kraut bastard can go straight to hell. Forced to come up with an alternate destination, the plane ultimately diverted to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, where Ms. Baerbock was forced to cover up her disgusting hair with a hijab and make her way to a local hotel to spend the night in a kingdom that only exists because of fossil fuel extraction. Reached for comment, Poetic Justice stated, quote, end quote. Dateline, don't fucking mess with Texas. Thursday, 25 January. 25 of America's governors have expressed their solidarity and support with Governor Greg Abbott of Texas as he quite properly asserts his state's right to defend itself against Joe Biden's ongoing migrant invasion. the governors of Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Montana, Oklahoma, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Nevada, Nebraska, New Hampshire, North Dakota, South Dakota, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming all affixed their signatures to a statement saying that they are not on board with the orgy of lawlessness that has resulted in Joe Biden and his chief henchman, the Homeland Security Secretary, enemy saboteur, and skin-suited reptilian space alien Alejandro Mayorkas, gleefully throwing the border open to at least 10 million military-age males, many of them from countries who mean to do us harm, who, at this point, could be just about anywhere, doing just about anything, because Joe and Alex thought it would be a good idea to just hand them each a ticket saying, here's your court date in fucking 2033, and until then, please feel free to enjoy all the benefits of this theme park called America Land. But it's okay, guys. You have to allow your country to be overrun by God knows who from God knows where, because the Democrat Party sparkly hearts illegal aliens, and they think this helps them win elections. So shut the hell up and don't say anything, or else we will call you racist. Dateline Leipzig, Germany, Friday, 26 January. Everyone's favorite doom troll of the apocalypse, Miss Greta Thunberg, apparently has her own gang of thugs now, whom she enjoys sending to beat up journalists who ask her inconvenient questions. Following her surprise appearance at a pro-Hamas rally in Leipzig earlier this week, and before you ask, your guess is as good as mine as far as what the hell the Israel-Hamas situation has to do with climate change and global warming and whatnot. A freelance video journalist for the local TV outlet Sachsen Fernsehen reported that he and his assistant were chased down the street and beaten severely by a group of men wearing Palestinian flag paraphernalia. According to the statement, the beating continued even after the journalist had already fallen to the ground, with the attackers punching and kicking the two men until they got tired and were unable to continue. Where the hell were the cops all this time? Unclear. Both of the men were hospitalized by the attack with blunt force cranial injuries. The moral of the story? Well, you better think twice before you talk shit about Greta, because she will send her Palestinian goon squad after your ass in a heartbeat. But hey, it's good to see the young lady branching out, I think. Being a climate apocalypse doom troll is so limiting, after all. It's better when you can be the midget mascot for every other form of deranged leftist buffoonery under the sun. And it'll be interesting to see where Greta is, say, 8 or 10 years from now, after her 15 minutes of contrived manufactured fame have come to an end, because I got $100 that says she's going to do her first porn video before her 25th birthday. And I got another $100 that says Captain Planet will be the guy putting the wood to her. And that's your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for this, the 4th week of January 2024. And with that, I pass the baton over to my lovely and talented co-host, the man who is to large furry hominids what Levi Strauss is to blue jeans, your friend and mine, the one and only Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
You know, I believe if Jesus were here today, he'd work at a Taco Bell. So, nope, it flipped us over again. I hate it when it does that. What do you think about that one? I'm pretty sure I met Jesus the other day when he was at my Taco Bell. He said it different though.
It might have been Jesus, actually.
Jesus, yeah, there we go. Weirdly enough, I think he's the same guy that does my lawn. They look different though.
Yes.
All
people
right.
People ask me to find Jesus. I say he mows my lawn every fucking Sunday. I can find him just fine.
Yeah, he's right outside. Sometimes he brings me a pot pie from the KFC. We have
True.
lunch on the back porch.
Sometimes he even brings tamales.
Dude, when I was working at one of the power plants over here, building one of these local power plant jobs, I ran across one of my bosses' name was Jesse, and he was from like southern Mexico. Like he's hardcore Mexican. I mean, like Mexican flag boots and Mexican flag belt buckle, and he's Mexican, bro. Right? His wife made the greatest tamales I've ever eaten, and I just straight paid that woman weekly to bring me lunch. Do you want to talk about a look on some people's faces when the boss man on the site shows up with your lunch every day? No one understands why. I gave that woman $50 a week. I wanted those tamales just like that. $50. I get tamales.
Yeah, I actually need to make a batch of tamales this week. As luck would have it.
5 times.
Because apparently there's this Mexican tradition that I wasn't aware of up until a couple weeks ago, where it has something to do with the Feast of the Epiphany. I forget what exactly it's called, but you make it's like a loaf of bread. It's a circular loaf of bread, and there's 3 little plastic babies inside, and everybody cuts themselves a piece of the loaf, and if you get one of the plastic babies, then you have to bring tamales for everybody on the 2nd of February. It's a very specific tradition with very specific rules. But I got one of the little plastic Jesuses, so I have to make a batch of tamales now. I don't quite have Lady Curmudgeon on board yet, but I'm working on it.
You know what I do on my birthday, right? I told you once before. All right, I'm a groundhog baby. On my birthday, I get up at 9 a.m. I start a live stream, and I call it a groundhog roast. And you can bring whatever snazzy bullshit you think's funny enough to make the cut. But I'm going to be smoking every single one of y'all up when you come up on panel. You best come armed, because I'm not over having a battle of wits against the unarmed.
And I was thinking about making a video documentary of the tamale making process.
Fuck yeah, do that twice. Because you're going to screw it up the first time.
Oh, no. It's going to be tamales con hueros. It's going to be fucking fantastic.
And don't forget, you can always do a voiceover. You don't necessarily have to get the lines right while you're doing it.
Going to do a wide shot, a medium shot, like a GoPro head cam shot, whole 9 yards.
There you go. You got it. You done figured it all out. All right, so what's the topic for the night, bro? You brought it in. Why don't you explain to everybody what it is and what's going on?
We're going to talk about the line, and this is not a Hunter Biden joke, before anybody gets any ideas.
Okay, so you mean the Saudi Arabian project where they're going to build a super mega structure that's supposed to house the entire population of Saudi Arabia and
not the entire population of Saudi Arabia, but they are planning, apparently, in this pie in the sky idea of theirs, that they are going to jam 9 million people into this monstrosity, which is going to be, just for ease of reference, picture the 2 World Trade Center towers, 300 foot taller and 100 miles long. And, with a couple 100 foot of open space in between them. And it's going to extend from the Red Sea across the Gulf of Aqaba and 100 miles into the interior of the Arabian Peninsula. And they are actively excavating for the thing along the whole length of the project right now, or so I understand. And but yeah, I thought it would be good to talk about this specifically in the context of the fact that our self-appointed overlords, the people who would like to fancy themselves the rulers of the world, they would prefer a status quo in which most or all of us are living in super hyper densely concentrated population centers like this one. And I think it's, go ahead.
You're good.
No, but I think it's interesting that in the context of Saudi Arabia, you could probably make an argument for something like this, because let's face it, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula is about 99% uninhabitable. So nature did not intend for the Saudi Arabian Peninsula to have 70, 80, 100 million people living on it. So if they're going to have continued population growth, they probably do need to start getting into some out of the box thinking like this. Whether it needs to be such a brute force monstrosity like this one that they're envisaging, that might be a bridge too far for my taste, and most of the world's architects seem to agree with me from the reading I've done in the past week or so. There seems to be a consensus that if and when this thing is actually completed, it's going to bear little resemblance to the renderings that have been published by the government and the American architect they have brought on board to design the thing. Really, they haven't published any of the engineering drawings or the technical specifications or anything, just some some fancy pictures, more or less, and they're not even bona fide architectural renderings. I saw one architect say these pictures look more like they were designed by a video game guy than an architect. So take that for what you will. It's a very utopian pie in the sky thing at this point, and it will be interesting, I think, to see how it winds up playing out in terms of whom they can convince to actually go live in this thing, and whether it's a living hell or something that people actually enjoy.
Are you familiar with the South African Utopia project? I can't remember the name of the actual building, but they built this supposed utopia that was supposed to be, 300,000 people living in absolute harmony or whatever, and it turned into one of the worst ghettos in Johannesburg.
Oh, yeah, as these things often do.
Yeah, there's another one in Amsterdam. But I was just looking at this plot line of 170 kilometers long, and it cuts through the heart of a freaking mountain over here.
Yep.
You reckon there's water in that mountain?
I don't think there's much water anywhere on that peninsula, frankly.
Yeah, it kind of looks like God was angry at it.
And I would think that, I don't know this for sure, but I would think that part of the reason they have the thing going across the Gulf of Aqaba is so that there's a water source, and they presumably will have to build some sort of desalination facility there by which they can intake water and make it suitable for public use. But there's all kinds of logistical problems here that haven't even been mentioned, or much less dealt with by the Saudi government and their architectural partners. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how things proceed. Also, I am deeply sorry that I project too much during the news roundup. I'm working on it. I will get better.
Yeah, you get excited. It's fine. And like I told her,
I'm accustomed to doing it the way I do it, and I go into autopilot, and I do apologize.
It's fine. When we get it balanced out, it'll be just fine. It's just you bring it harder when you're live.
I know.
You don't get quite that hard when you're filming. You don't do it backstage. So like, it's being live, you do the performance, and I have no problem with that. We just have to catch up to it. we gotta catch the right zone there, because every other time you can use StreamYard to adjust up,
And I even clicked the volume control button this time, but I guess it didn't help that much.
I checked. No, it's clipping out on the mic itself. We have to get into the end of it. It's the difference between talking normally and going, ladies and gentlemen, live from Los Angeles, California. It's fine, dude. We're working it out. It's a work in progress. That's the way it goes. All right. So here's my argument with the line. Here's my problem with it. Beyond the fact I don't have any particular issue with the construction of it. Technically speaking, if the sufficient resources are available to construct a 100-meter long version of this thing, you should be able to stack that together over time. The problem is you also have to provide water, food, shelter for absolutely every aspect of this freaking construction project. You're talking, to begin with, a few thousand people just to lay out the towns that will spring up to build this thing. I don't see any of the infrastructure in place to allow any of that stuff. I mean, you'd have to build a highway there just to bring the equipment to build a highway there, so that you could build the highway to get there to build the town to you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and one of the selling points of this thing is that supposedly it's going to produce no carbon emissions, to which I've seen a lot of architects say, and correctly, I think, well, the amount of steel and concrete and glass you're putting into this thing is going to be an expenditure of carbon that will never, ever be offset in a million years. So what are you saving exactly?
You see what they did here, right? And it's kind of the idea you would have in the actual construction process. The concept is to create a single repeatable cookie cutter formation. it's not going to work that way. The farther you have to pump the water from the Gulf of freaking Aqaba or whatever it is. Where is it? What Gulf's that in?
Gulf of Aqaba.
Aqaba. The farther away you are from that Gulf, the harder you're going to have to pump that water. But
yeah, the little Gulf that's between Syria and Saudi Arabia, they have it straddling that thing.
You need a massive amount of water, and with the problems they have, the problems that are had with virtually any government project, and maybe I haven't dealt with a autocratic regime myself, but I have worked for the government a couple of times, and it never goes well. The product
and an autocratic regime is the only place you can even attempt a project like this, because in any democratic country you're going to run into zoning commissions and citizens groups and all kinds of other people who have problems with the project and want the project built another way, and they're living in the area of the project and they don't want to just all that shit that goes along with building new big projects. But
you would also have actual people out there standing there. You can't do that, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Because live there, but out here, there's nobody out there. They're not displacing but about 3 coyotes and a rat and some endangered moth that only lives in that one valley. But we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, because the Arabian Peninsula is probably the second most uninhabitable place on Earth after the interior of Antarctica.
New Jersey?
I would submit.
New Jersey
or New Jersey. You raise a fair point.
You ever smelled that place, dude?
Yeah, I've been to Philly one time and I could smell Jersey from there. So yeah,
son, it's like rotten suntan oil and crabs. Yep,
that's pretty much the extent of it. And also, you've got I know there's probably not a whole hell of a lot of migratory birds that fly over the Arabian Peninsula, but still, a 1,600-foot tall mirror is probably going to kill a lot of flying creatures. That's just a guess on my part. Because if there's anything we know about birds, it's that buildings with mirrored surfaces kind of confuse the shit out of them. They tend to make suicide runs into the sides of them.
I just had an image of a camel like having a showdown with itself, and then hundreds of them meeting on both sides just to stare at themselves and show off. How many camel jokes can you come up with in 7 minutes? Are you going to ride that thing or should we eat it? Have you ever wrapped up a texture?
Ride it or eat it. I guess that's probably been a conundrum for more than one Arabian down through the ages.
I wonder how the Arabians got shortchanged on the camel. I mean, don't the Tartarians have 2 humps? I mean, they could eat one and ride the other.
Yeah, it's the dromedary, and the dromedary has 2 humps, I believe, and the other, whatever the other kind of camel is, has only one.
Camel.
Yeah, I'm not a big camel expert. I can't claim to be one, but I think it's interesting also that there's a lot of Western people who are looking to this project as a desirable thing that all countries should aim to emulate. But how much do people really want to live in hyper concentrated, super dense density population centers like this? Take the most densely populated city in the world, and this thing that they are trying to build is going to be about 5 times more concentrated than that. They want to put 9 million people in this damn thing, and it is 100 yards wide. And man, and there's a subterranean component also.
That's only a little bit longer than 2 freaking container trucks parked end to end.
I know it is shockingly narrow, and you've got 100 foot of building, 100 foot of open space, and then another 100 foot of building. And from the way the renderings look, it's just assumed that you're going to have pleasant, temperate conditions in the open space between the 2 buildings. And I would be fascinated to know how they plan to achieve that.
They're going to use the seawater to to transport massive amounts of heat away from it. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but I can kind of see it in my head. It's a doable thing. You don't have to actually desalinate it. You don't have to do none of that. You just use the water as a cooling mechanism and dump it right back in the Gulf of Arakwaba or whatever his fucking name is.
It does take a serious set of balls to start building a thing when you haven't solved really any of the engineering problems yet.
I don't know, man. Like, some of these problems have been managed to an extent in mostly laboratory conditions, but the concept might be doable. In SimCity, they would call this an arcology.
An arcology, yep.
And once you reached a point where you could construct arcologies, there really wasn't much more to do in the game. You'd pretty much shot your wad in that thing by then.
Or you could make your arcology fly into space.
Yeah, but why?
and that's when you won the game, wasn't it? I mean, it's been a long time since I played it, but I used to play it quite a lot.
Dude, I had a glitch happen on one of mine where I had a coal-fired power plant that ran for 1,000,000 years. It never died. It was the very first one I made, and when I was planting arcologies all over there was this one coal-fired power plant over yonder just chugging the frick away. You know, nuclear ion. We got lasers and crap, microwave transmissions, and a coal-fired power plant right over there. Like
back about 20 years ago or so, not making this up, Lady Curmudgeon and I used to have battles over the computers because we both wanted to work on our Sim Cities. Almost wrecked our marriage. Amazing, we came out the other side.
Me and my wife had an issue with Grand Theft Auto for a little while. Well, I mean, we shared an account for the longest time because I don't play games very often, but then that one sucked me in. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 sucked me in. And so I ended up getting my own. Actually, she got a new system and I got her old system and her old profile. So I've got the GTA account with so many billions of dollars. It's ridiculous.
I like how they're saying right there that they aim to preserve 90% of the nature between the two buildings. What, 95% of the fucking sand?
Yeah, no, dude.
How much nature is there really there?
It's two beetles and a snake, and it's over there.
Exactly. It is two beetles and a snake. You are exactly right.
Maybe a scorpion.
And I know all about that kind of thinking because here in California, we still the coastal commission still won't let us build desalination plants because we might inconvenience a fucking seal slug.
The gooey ducks might get offended.
Yeah. All human progress has to halt if some stupid creature nobody's ever heard of might have his day ruined.
Okay.
That's the way we need to orient our priorities in the new woke future.
I have an alternate theory. What if this has nothing to do with building the line and has everything to do with engineering a resource sink for certain people, a place for someone to lose a whole bunch of money that never actually existed?
Yeah. And I wonder how much of it is just an attempt to pander to Western woke ecomaniacs with the whole no carbon emissions thing, because it seems counterintuitive that a kingdom which only exists because of oil extraction would care about any of that kind of shit, right?
Yeah. I don't buy it for a second. I'm thinking there's got to be a reason that makes this make sense. If any amount of this succeeds, right? Any of the systems that are applied to this type of a megastructure that it actually functions on any level would be beneficial engineering knowledge to carry into the next megastructure. The problem,
right? And it seems like the sensible way to do it would be maybe build a 10-mile section first, and then get that up and running, and see what the problems are, and devise your solutions before you build the entire 100 miles. But they are excavating along the entire 100 miles because don't tell the Saudi royal family not to go big or go home, I guess.
Well, they're definitely going big. I can respect
They
that.
are definitely going big, and they are just going to try. And I would be fascinated to see those drawings. I wish they would publish them.
You know what I would have done? I would have started somewhere significant that would have had a cultural significance to the region, so that there would be a reason for the nation to actually get behind the concept. And then I would build a 5-city block long piece of it, and maybe build another 5 city blocks a few years later using the upgraded techniques learned from the first 5 blocks, and then advance forward that way. The farther you get out into the desert, you are bringing your supply train, and all of your city structure will be built behind you while you're going, right? Like, you'll have your workforce with you moving forward in the living spaces available near the front edge of the wall. This isn't going to work.
And and you need to figure out the most basic issues, like how water distribution and power transmission and all that kind of stuff. And they're just gonna put the whole 100 miles up and running right at once without testing and solving any of those problems. It seems like a fool's errand to me. It seems like it is doomed to fail in spectacular, catastrophic fashion.
With no cars.
0 cars. Yeah.
Just
a big 1,600 foot tall mirror in the middle of the desert. That's going to kill more birds than every bird slicing, bat chomping eco crucifix they ever built.
You really don't like those fucking windmills, do you?
God, I hate those bird slicing, bat chomping eco crucifixes.
Won't even say the word windmill.
I mean, if you were intentionally trying to blight the natural landscape for not much of a good reason at all, you couldn't do much better than that. And God, I see more of those things every time I drive north into the interior of the state. I see more of those goddamn things. Like how did Prince Charles put it? Like a carbuncle on the nose of a much loved friend. I would put it that way.
Right. I kind of have
Sorry, King Charles. I forgot he's the king now.
This theory that they're not actually there for generating power. They're there to generate power for a specific purpose. I don't know what the purpose is, because windmills
they're there to generate political power.
That too. Yeah, I guess you're right there. But I was thinking of something like, the federal Homeland Security's network of whatever the hell you want to run off of a little bit of power somewhere in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Right. And then we go ahead.
Well, that's the only place they're good, is in the middle of freaking nowhere. No one wants one in their front yard.
Yeah. And then we get into the whole issue of, they tell us that we're going to have an all-electric world and everybody needs to buy an electric car. And they also tell us that we're going to power the electric cars with renewable energy, because otherwise you're just powering your electric cars with energy derived from fossil fuels, which would seem to defeat the whole point of the enterprise. But here's the problem. You can festoon the entire surface of the world with stupid mirrors and solar panels and bird slicing, bat chomping eco crucifixes, and you're still never going to generate enough megawatts to power an all-electric world. It's just not going to happen. The math doesn't work. It doesn't pencil out. Even at the most basic level of arithmetic, it doesn't pencil out. And they still tell you that this is the future we all have to aspire to live in. And it's bullshit and nonsense.
Absolute nonsense. I don't buy a single bit of it. I'm not debating the human affected climate change. This is entirely possible. What the hell ever. I really don't see a whole lot we can do about it at this point. We adapt. We've been adapting for 40,000 years. We adapted so fucking well. We out adapted 18 other species of us. This is what we do. Hold my beer.
The Dutch figured out how to live under sea level 400 years ago. And they've been doing just fine since then.
Didn't the Boers learn to live in South Africa? That's like the surface of the fucking moon, man. Some of those places out there are remote.
Well, in New Orleans, they live under sea level, and it would have been fine as long as they had maintained the levees, but they didn't maintain the levees. And what happened, 15 years ago? God, that was almost 20 years ago now, wasn't it?
Bro,
Jesus.
I went to New Orleans about a year before Katrina come through, and I went
Did you?
back like 8 years later, and bro, 8 years later, the devastation was still so palpable on every single square inch of everything you could see. It was like it's a fucking natural disaster, frankly.
Well, yeah, they were saying in the immediate aftermath of the thing, they were saying the city is destroyed. Period. Like not we've got a lot of rebuilding to do. They said the city is destroyed. The mayor actually said that the city is destroyed.
I almost bought some land over there right after all of that, just because, you know, it was pennies on the acre pretty much. Like there were folks selling out for like nothing for a little while there, and I kind of regret not doing it, but I felt like an ass just thinking about it, you know. Like people lost absolutely everything, and I was like, you know what would be really intelligent? You just buy.
You felt like a dirty land speculator, didn't you?
When I mean, all I needed was the fucking mustache, dude. Big old cigar and a monocle. And
Gotta learn how to twirl it. Yep. Put your monocle in, twirl your mustache, and learn a good evil laugh.
I got a good one, dude.
I'll get you, my pretty.
I'll get you, my pretty. And a
little
little
dog too.
There you go. Like the penguin. I'm sorry, y'all. I got distracted. I apologize.
Oh, for you NFL fans out there, it looks like the fucking Lions are going to the Super Bowl, if you can believe it. 24-10, halfway through the third quarter.
When you talk about some pie in the sky type stuff, dude, you're not just talking little pies.
Oh no.
Look, they have plants growing on the inside of the buildings, on the outside of the structure.
Oh, I know. It looks like fucking downtown Wakanda. like a Marvel Cinematic Universe fucking utopia.
Okay, now I want you to back up and imagine New York City. Like every one of those assholes that are sitting on their freaking fire escape at 2:00 in the morning, freebasing meth.
Yep.
They're not tending their garden. Now, in an autocratic state like this, you can have the police go around and shoot anyone who doesn't tend their gardens. Yeah, that's a thing that can happen. But
then that's going to make everyday life just a little bit less utopian.
Just a little. But if you're not with the utopia, you should be taken upstate to the farm, upstate.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I would think they're in order to actually get 9 million people into this thing, I would think they're going to have to offer some pretty heavy incentives.
Well,
okay. I don't think people will be lining up in their tens of millions to want to live in this thing. That's just a hunch. I mean, some people might, I guess, but I can't see it.
Well, it didn't work for Amsterdam, and it didn't work for South Africa, and it didn't work in Paris, and it didn't work for Robespierre. It didn't work. It did not work the first time, the second time, the 50th time. It may have worked in China, but we don't know because, you know, we don't get actual news out of China. We get party line out of China. So,
you know. Right. And ultimately, isn't it just an attempt to engineer human nature out of humanity? Because isn't there a desire, even if they don't realize it, isn't there a desire in the heart of every person to own some land? You know, just to have a patch of earth that's your very own, that you can do. People find that more attractive than they do, you know, 350 square feet of apartment in a massively hyper concentrated, super densely urban, whatever this thing is, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I got to admit one thing. Anything they do with that land would be an improvement.
It's true. Because, like I say, 99% of that peninsula is uninhabitable and totally useless for anything. And if Americans and British people hadn't discovered oil there, then that peninsula would still be just a few nomadic Bedouin tribes here and there. They sure as shit wouldn't have a royal family. They sure as shit wouldn't be mega billionaires. They sure as shit wouldn't be in a position to build something like this thing.
It's kind of nightmarish thing. It's very, very cyberpunk. I mean,
it is. It gives me an indescribably uncomfortable feeling just looking at the thing. And imagining that the people who fancy themselves the overlords of the world would prefer that we all live in places like that, which let's just call it an arcology, because it's the equivalent. It's the same concept. You are concentrating huge, massive numbers of people into a land area in which that number of people were never intended to live, and you're trying to convince them that they're all going to be happy and blissful just because they can walk everywhere and don't have to drive a car
and eat the bugs. Live in
you will eat the bugs.
You will eat the bugs.
You will eat the bugs. Schweinhund.
Schweinhund.
You will eat the bugs and you will like it.
I might eat. I like shrimp.
I am Klaus Schwab and I approve this message.
Shrimps? Can we do shrimps? I mean, if you just make them shrimps, we got no problem, bro. I'll eat.
It seems like there should be shrimp in the Gulf of Aqaba.
There's not enough for 9 million people, though, bro.
Not enough for 9 million people. I mean, you're 9 million people in an area 100 miles wide and 100 miles long and a football field wide.
Football field wide, Jesus Christ!
A football field wide. Because that's what we're talking about. It just when you talk about the top level parameters of the thing, it sounds infeasible in the extreme, doesn't it?
2 container cars.
Yeah. You've got 100 foot of building, 100 foot of open space, and another 100 foot of building, and
right.
That for 100 miles. That's what you've got.
So, what happens to the migration patterns of any of the birds and animals that might happen to pass through this area?
They all die from blunt force cranial trauma.
Oh,
it's called collateral damage.
Oh, that's not a problem. We're good with that.
Yeah. Nobody likes Arabian birds anyway.
Hold on. This is significantly wider than a football field.
Is it? What's the width?
That is a bus.
Oh, right there?
That is heavy equipment.
Yeah, let me pull up the parameters real fast. I might be wrong on the width.
I mean, there's construction far outside of this line area. I mean, there's an entire city, and it looks like right over there, and I don't believe it's supposed to be there. It looks temporary. Huh. That is a freaking crane. That thing's like 112 foot tall, 115 foot
All right,
tall.
it says here the width is 1/10 of a mile. So how many feet is that?
Okay, that makes much more sense.
So what's the math there? 5,280 divided by 10?
5,000 feet.
Yeah. No, well, a tenth of 5,000. Hold on a second.
You say 52,000 something for the mile?
Well, a mile is 5,280 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
So 580 something feet. 520 each mile. Anyway, it doesn't matter the details. That's still 500 feet. That's not much more. That's
So it's 500 feet wide instead of 300, which
that's not much more. Dude, there's a lot more shit going on here than some 500 foot wide. Dude, I've built
It
power
does.
plants.
It does at a glance look more than 500 foot wide because there is a bus in the middle of that picture for scale.
I've driven some
unless what's being excavated here is just the outer edge of the thing, and they're going to build inward from there. I guess I don't know.
Hold up. I saw a scene that I wanted to catch. Not that one. Not that one. That was it right there. Did you see that flash? I think that thing's 5 miles wide, bro. There it is. You get an actual shot of it on for just a split second.
Yeah, it does. When you look at the pictures, it does seem quite a bit wider than 500 feet. I will give you that.
Significantly, like maybe more like a half mile wide, 3/4 of a mile, maybe, because that's way bigger than several football fields, dude.
Yeah, and it says here the width is 0.2 kilometers and 0.1 miles. But maybe they've changed the design and not told anybody. I mean, they have the right to do that. It is an autocratic regime, after all.
Look at that monstrosity, dude. It's Lord.
I know. It's. I mean, fans of brutalist architecture will like it, but man, that's brutalist is the word.
It really is.
There is nothing pretty about that big shiny monolith.
It is hard on the eyes, man.
Yeah, Queen Bird calls it dystopian. That is exactly the adjective I would use as well.
Yeah,
she's got that exactly right.
I'm just.
I don't even. In other words, I don't even like looking at the thing from the outside in a conceptual drawing, much less wanting to live inside it.
I'm just going to leave that up there for the continuance of this conversation. Because this
human rights, we're an absolute monarchy. We don't have to worry about human rights.
Yeah, we're
human rights.
It's not a thing. It's not a thing.
That,
you can't.
Yeah, that is not a thing.
Sir, it can't be considered. So
your human rights are whatever rights the king decides you're allowed to have.
Wow.
In collaboration with Muhammad.
Which is, whatever the king says it is when it comes down to it.
Basically, yeah.
Maybe they're just trying to use up all the gas before we do.
Oh, speaking of that, we should probably talk about Joe Biden's moratorium on liquid national gas exports. Did you hear about that one?
I didn't understand what I heard about it. It sounded absurd, and I think my brain just said, "No, that can't be right," and moved on.
Well, I think it is a direct smackdown on Texas for standing up to the lawlessness of the administration. Because if you put a moratorium on liquid national gas exports, that is just a kicking Texas right in the nuts, basically, just because you can.
But no, they can't. Not really, because it could go the other way. If Texas just decides not to export to the U.S., what if Texas decides to export to Mexico? What you going to do about that? Because Mexico will take it and be like, gracias.
And we're probably going to have to start thinking about a lot of questions like that coming up. I mean, if this is the way things are going to go, if they're that insistent on throwing the border open and being lawless bastards, I mean, don't mess with Texas is all I'm saying. I think don't mess with Texas is a sensible rule in life. I wouldn't mess with Texas.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the show, and I've made the comment that where the South went wrong the first time is they didn't have Texas on their side. If we'd had Texas with us, it would have been a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, because Texas has only been part of the country for less than 20 years at that point. So
no, they pretty much
and a
settled.
lot of people who lived in Texas at the time went to Texas because they didn't want to be in America. So
They pretty much sat on the sidelines for about 10 years. They're sharpening their knife, waiting to see which way the dice were going to come.
So it's absolutely correct to say that there was less allegiance to the Confederacy in Texas than there was anywhere else, and that made a hell of a big damn difference, because as we know, the Confederacy wanted to expand to the westward and to the southward, and an unenthusiastic Texas creates a big problem for that scheme, doesn't it?
There were Southern people that had eyeballs on South America and Cuba and Haiti, and all of the Bahama Islands was fixing to become part of a greater expansionist Confederate state that never happened because,
Well, yeah, they envisaged a whole Confederate Southern Empire encompassing the Caribbean and Mexico and Central America and
Brazil.
And some Confederates actually moved down there.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a huge contingent of people who still claim to be part of like some confederated something or other, and they're all Brazilians now.
Yeah, and down in Brazil, you're right. They still observe Confederate holidays in some cities and some towns in Brazil, right up to this day.
Last names like Williams and Wilkins and Dutchison and Holiday and McCoy and Hatfield and Mars and Stewart and but they're Brazilian.
And a lot of people, a lot of Americans in particular, who are just ignorant and don't know any better, who think that Central and South America are all sort of ethnically and culturally monolithic. They really have no idea how wrong they are, because you've got American communities, you've got German communities, you've got all kinds of communities down there from different groups of riffraff that settled there down through the centuries and implanted their culture, and cultural memory lasts a long time.
Oh yeah, there are little enclaves up in North Georgia mountains where you have this one valley over here that is built just like an ancient alpine, like an old school alpine village named Helen. And then on the other side of the mountain, you have something that looks almost exactly like a 15th century Irish freaking village. It's just that the Irish settled over here, and when they came in, they built what they knew to build. And the Germans came over here, and the Austrians were over there, and of course there's always the Dutch. That's not a punchline. Did you just go muted? You went muted, didn't you? Your mic just died on us.
I didn't mean to mute myself.
Oh, that explains it. We're professional.
As I was about to say, I think a lot of people imagine that the reason why so many Nazi war criminals fled to Argentina and Chile after the war was just because, the Argentinian government said, "We love Nazis, come on over." But that's not true at all. They went to those countries because there were already German expatriate communities there that they could go and be a part of, that had been there since the late 19th century. So of course, if they were looking for a place to go in the Western Hemisphere, that's where they would go. Why the hell wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, you'd go somewhere that feels comfortable, somewhere where you know the customs. You wouldn't want to go to, like, say, Saudi Arabia, as Actually, you might get invited into that place, given what you've done.
Yeah, and as we know, lots of Americans and British people have lived in Saudi Arabia for a long time as resident employees of the oil companies who first discovered and extracted that country's mineral wealth and installed their royal family and made them all rich beyond the dreams of avarice. That was all Americans and Brits who did that. That wasn't the Arabians who did it.
That is true.
It was we who said, you guys are going to be pretty fucking rich with all this oil you got in the ground, so we better install a royal family for you. And the House of Saud was just who we happened to pick to be the royal family. They didn't really have any claim to royalty. They just happened to be standing there at the time. You want to be the royal family? Sure. Okay.
Bro, look at this. Look at this. There's 70, 80 foot yachts in the canal in the space between the buildings. There's no
so that's going to be the part that straddles the Gulf of Aqaba right there.
In theory, but
yeah, in theory.
That's just 500 feet, man. At 500 yards, there's no way, no how. If that's a 65 foot, yacht, then you're talking. It's significant.
Yeah, I feel like the drawings they have published don't necessarily comport with the dimensions of the project that they have published.
That is my point. All of it seems sketchy when you go and look at the footprint. On the ground. They're carving out a 1/2 mile, 2 mile wide freaking section over here, saying it's going to be 500 yards. Like, I don't buy it.
Like they just made some fancy pictures and started digging, and we're like, it'll be fine.
No,
it'll all work out.
It's actually the art. They're digging in a deep underground military base underneath it, and it's all for the survival of the human species beyond the impact of the asteroid they know that's coming to wipe us all out. This is just a big cover for to make it happen with the money that is available and the resources available. And so they're saying, hey, we're doing this really cool thing that's going to save the fucking planet, when really it's just going to save their asses.
It would not be the strangest thing that ever happened.
It would make far more sense than anything I've heard so far.
Yeah, and there is supposed to be a fairly vast underground component to this thing. You're supposed to have one underground level that is for all your public transportation, and another underground level that is for all your mechanical and utility infrastructure. So you could put anything you wanted to down there and not tell anybody about it, since, like we said, we are in an autocratic regime and we can do whatever the hell we want.
What was that line from Contact? Why build one when you can build two for twice the price?
Exactly. What was that guy's name? Mr. Haddon? Was that his name?
I can't remember. But yeah, he was living on the space station so he could live a few hours longer.
Yep. Living with the Ruskies. Fucking traitorous bastard.
Hey, man. You do what you got to do. That's what I call fuck you money, dude. That's hardcore.
Yes. Yeah. How many people could die in space if they wanted to? Probably less than 10.
Oh, well, how many of them would survive getting to space? I mean, if Captain Kirk can do it, surely I can.
Well, and obviously at this point we only have one orbital installation that's capable of hosting people. So you would have to buy a spot on the ISS from somebody, and the ISS is getting pretty old
and kind of crowded.
Yep, and kind of crowded, and it as relations between the U.S. and Russia continue to break down, and I made a video about this not long ago. we run the risk of having some kind of conflict break out up there, where we are supposed to be happily cooperating with this other country, and down on Earth our relations continue deteriorating. So let's not pretend that doesn't have an effect up in orbit.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. It may have an effect in orbit, but in orbit, I'm going to be much more motivated to get along with you than I will be on the ground. Because in orbit, if we don't get along and some shit hits the fan, we all die.
Yep.
We're going to get along, whether you like it or not.
And I do have it on good authority that when you're in orbit and women are present, you spend most of your time staring at boobs. Because boobs in zero gravity are even more wondrous than they are at ground level.
No comment. You know how I feel about that. If there's one bit of information on Earth that I have to consider when it comes to whether or not we're in space and whether or not it's a big hoax, is the fact that there's not a single snuff film in zero G that I've ever seen. And without that film, I cannot believe we are actually there.
You don't need to wear a bra in space, that's for damn sure.
Sorry, I was just picturing my wife at zero G.
Yep.
Let
those globes bounce around in orbit proudly.
Wow. I'm sorry, I'm fully distracted now. You've stopped.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. Can't you see how distracting that would be? Just thinking about it is distracting. Imagine living it.
Cross a mountain, man.
Yeah, so there you're starting there on the left in the Red Sea, and then you're straddling a little tiny bit of the Gulf of Aqaba, and then you're going all the way to the east, and I forget the city where the eastern terminus is, but yeah, you're looking at 100 miles right there, and however many feet wide it is, which they're not telling us, which is probably more than 500, like they're telling us.
What happens when they're digging this thing and find some other resource more valuable than the line? They find a new cobalt mine or whatever, diamonds.
But what if they find more oil?
Sure. I mean, well, that kind of goes without saying. I think that's also part of this. Just there has to be.
Go ahead.
There has to be a reason. There has to be a reason, and I can't believe that they're just going to build public housing for 11 million people out of the
because it is an incredible expenditure of money and resources just for a feel good project, you know. Because you are talking about many hundreds of billions of dollars to build this thing. Even in the best case scenario, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over $1 trillion, because how often can you build a thing for the initial amount that you budgeted? 0% of the time, never.
Say it again.
0% of the time, never.
Build 5 city blocks, make it work, top to bottom, front to back, inside and out, and then you build 5 more.
Yeah, I mean, start out with, say, a population of 50 or 100,000. Build a 1/20th of the thing, just to see what unanticipated problems present themselves, which you know, the unknown unknowns, and then ameliorate the problems, figure out how to deal with them, and then get on with building the rest of the thing. I mean, go big or go home is a perfectly good philosophy up to a point, but when you get into something like this, it becomes folly pretty quickly.
Atlantis was in Doggerland.
Was it?
She's like, imagine if they find Atlantis, and I dig it, but if you follow the directions to get to Atlantis, you end up in a sunken continent called Doggerland. It's just north of Europe. It's in the channel between like Europe and UK. There's a massive flat out there that's only about 20 feet underwater, but used to be above water a few thousand years ago. And right around the time Atlantis vanished, that whole freaking area flooded. It was mostly bogs and swamps and stuff in the first place. And so when it finally went under sea level, all the plant growth that was maintaining it went away, and it just sunk, turned into a big ass fucking mudslide.
And in some of the reading I've done about this thing, I saw where a couple of architects posed the question, and it's difficult to argue with it, that why build this thing as a line instead of a circle? Because a circle would probably make a hell of a lot more sense.
It would, and it would allow you much more basic air control, and you would get things like useful shadows and shade. You would have, even if you built the line in a north-south orientation instead of the east-west when they're doing, I don't understand the east-west thing.
Yeah, you're right. I don't understand the east-west orientation either. And I've been thinking about it ever since you mentioned it before the show backstage, and I can't think of a good answer why you wouldn't build it north-south instead of east-west. Unless the whole focus is just on water sources, Red Sea, Gulf of Aqaba, and so on. But you could still have those water sources if you built it in a circle. It would seem to me you would have a bigger outdoor space in the middle, which would probably be easier to climate control, right? You could still have your underground component. And what do I know? I'm not a Saudi prince.
Right. It's got to be a line, and it's got to be east-west, because that's the religious orthodoxy. I'm not sure I understand, but I could just the passive effect of a massive shadow on that landscape, the passive effect of forcing a column of air up due to the heat created by the city itself would completely change the weather of that entire area. However, if you do it in a line, east-west, the effects on the weather would be minimal. You want to disturb the air in a place like this. The more disturbed air you have, the more rainfall you have.
And Queenbird raises an excellent point, I think, and it's a point I wanted to get into, because we talked about what if alt hist before we came on, and he did a video the other day in which he raised a point that I thought was really outstanding, which is, if you go back to ancient times, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, each society and civilization had its own distinct architectural style. You can tell when something was built by the Persians or the Babylonians or the Egyptians or the Greeks and so on. And you can tell instantaneously, because their styles were totally unlike any of the other styles. But today, particularly since the end of the Second World War, all modern architecture throughout the world looks exactly the same. It is all square, glass, concrete monoliths that are indistinguishable from one another. And that's a radical departure from the first however many thousand years of human history. And the line here would seem to be a continuation of that, because it is a couple of just big glass and steel and concrete monoliths. There's nothing about these structures that identify themselves as Arabian or even Islamic or anything else. They are just big ass long skyscrapers that look like any other fucking skyscraper. Big monoliths of mirrored glass, because that's how we build everything now.
They keep showing the interior as having a whole bunch of plant space, right? But once you build, I mean, you're talking about something, what, another third or half again higher than the World Trade Center, you know?
Yeah, a third again. The World Trade Center towers, I believe, were 1,300 feet tall, and we're talking 1,600 here.
So, yeah, I mean, that's not a huge undertaking to build one.
No, it can be built. The question is it going to achieve the things you say it's going to achieve? And I'm very, very dubious about that.
Find it very unlikely.
I'm putting this comment up. Modern architecture absolutely does suck. Modern architecture is an absolute monstrosity, just like all modern art is. And I would lump modern art in with modern architecture. It all looks like dog shit. We are not allowed to make pretty things anymore for some reason.
I don't get it either. I mean, have you seen some of the art that's been released, like the magnificent sculptures that were paid millions of dollars that vaguely resemble some dude?
Yeah, they're building a giant anus in Palm Springs. I did a video about it to honor AIDS victims, which seems a little bit on the nose to me, but I'm not an art critic. I just think I wouldn't build a giant butthole, probably for any reason, but hey, I guess I'm just not cultured enough to know about these things.
Maybe that might be the case. I'm certainly not. I don't know.
Yeah, we're both pretty hopeless as far as our levels of erudition, I think.
Yeah. Well, you're West Coast, I'm East Coast, and it kind of comes together in the middle in a flyover capacity.
We're just not smart enough to understand why ugly things are really beautiful.
That explains the blue-haired tyrants that run around. Oh my
Yeah.
lord.
Purple-haired, lip-pierced lunatics, I believe, is how I put it in the song.
That's pretty good. I like that. You know, I always when I meet one of these people and they start being a bitch to me, I'll lean over and whisper to them, bright colored plumage is a warning in nature that the occupant is toxic. And they
true.
lose their minds.
Words to live by.
How many artists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
Well, first you have to sit around and discuss whether or not the light bulb wants to be changed. So we'll have to send that to a committee and have decisions made on whether or not we have a light bulb first to change. I'm about to have a sneezing fit. It seems to be just kind of creeping up on me.
Oh, I had one of those the other day. I hate those.
I had half of it earlier, but I think it's fixing to make another swing around. I've got to.
But anyway, go ahead.
Now go ahead.
No, Prince Mohammed bin Salman says this project is going to be fully complete by 2030, which gives him, by my count, about a little under 7 years, and they are just now excavating the trenches and digging the piles. So I will believe that when I see it. Let's just put it that way.
I still want to say that it's too much of an undertaking all at once.
Oh, it's going to wind up being some kind of ridiculous white elephant catastrophe. I think there's a 99% chance of that happening.
What did they used to call the weird little buildings that follies? You remember crazy? Yep. Yeah, dude, I love that idea. You know, they used to pay hermits to live in follies just to say they had their own hermit. People weren't.
One day, future archaeologists will find the remains of this thing, and they will say, "What the fuck were these people trying to build here?"
No, I don't think. Oh man. See, my thing is it even going to get far enough along to fail as a project? You know what I mean? Like, are they going to build any amount of actual livable structure, or is it just going to become some kind of like a pipeline structure later?
And it's the same question that we asked, like Queenbird was talking about it before, about the California bullet train, which they keep insisting on reviving, even though nobody wants or needs it. But God damn it, the California Democrats, they just want to build a fucking bullet train. Even if nobody rides it, they are determined to build a bullet train. And that this project gives me the same sort of governmental quixotic vibe. Like, yeah. I want to build this thing, and I am going to start building it. And obviously, as we mentioned, it's easier to do in an autocratic absolute monarchy. But is it ever going to be what you think it was going to be? And I think the answer to that question is very clearly no. I think that it's unequivocally no. This thing is never going to come out looking the way the drawings have it looking.
The bullet train would be useful for like LA to New York, New York to Miami, Miami to Houston, Houston to LA. That would be a useful cycle. Unfortunately, we don't have the train lines to do that. We would have to completely alter our method of building trains in order to achieve 300 miles an hour.
Bright hair and body is littered with tattoos are red flags for dangerous attention-seeking lunatics with extreme trauma problems. Oh, high five! Boom! Put her there.
That's
I had
true.
to read that. I had to read that comment of the episode right there.
If you're walking around in the modern era wearing a face mask, I'm not going to communicate with you in any way. If I have two choices of clerk, I'm going to the other one, even if they have 15 people in their line. And if you ask me to come over there, I'm going to ask anybody around me to go talk to you, because I'm not going to talk to you.
if you remember a couple years ago when the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was walking around everywhere he went with 2 face masks on and a fucking plastic welder's shield on his face? And how am I supposed to take a man seriously who walks around in public like that? Sorry, can't do it. Not gonna happen. You are a ridiculous buffoon just for going out in public like that, dude.
I have an issue with these people, not because I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to interact with them. I will not acknowledge their existence. These people can go on with their lives completely unbothered by me. The thing is,
did we talk about that last week? Did I? Because if on the occasionally it does happen still that I will come across a person with a ridiculous face diaper on, and if they try to talk to me, I simply say, I'm sorry, I can't understand you with that ridiculous thing on your face. If you want to talk to me, take it off.
I have hearing problems. I read lips a lot. So I just avoid them because you cannot have an intelligent conversation with these people. If you attempt information, they're going to go, and I'm not interested.
Yeah, if you want to converse with me, let me see your face. It's not an unreasonable request. If it's more important to you to have the fucking face diaper on, then go about your day. Just don't try to have a conversation with me. More power to you.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I can't tolerate it. I won't tolerate it, I guess is it.
You know, it was so difficult for me, and I know I mentioned this in a lot of videos at the time, but when I would see little kids with those fucking masks on their faces, it made me want to scream. Just like I am watching child abuse right now, and I don't know how to process it, and I can't tolerate it, and it makes me want to hurt people who do that to children.
I am going to make this acknowledgement, an observation that I've noticed. There is a specific demographic that wears masks here. It is not old white ladies. It is not old black men. It is right. Yeah. No, you got it. Yeah, exactly. And they tried to shut that down because they're morons and they hate God and they hate any organization that is not big papa government.
Goddamn right. Yeah, I was just about to say the exact same thing.
If it's not big papa government, it better be some PAC or some union or the city or someone of authority. These are the type of people that go to Google to find out what it is that they're supposed to do.
Yep. Any gathering that you were engaged in that has nothing to do with government has to be banned and eradicated. And it gave them just a fantastic chance for doing that, and they did it.
All right, so I found a video that is specifically kind of directly towards this concept of big daddy government taking the main boot, as it were. This video is from a channel called Auditing While Black, and he does reaction style content to different type of stuff. Most of it's police related, auditing related, that kind of stuff. But he found this one, and I'm not sure the guy who made it actually meant to be as based as he was. He seems kind of nutty. I went and looked at the rest of his channel, but so I'm going to go with this source because I like a few of the comments that Auditing While Black has to say during it. It's about 10 minutes. I'm going to let you do the talk out, and then we're going to put this up as like the play out. If you want to stick around and watch it, that's great. If not, I've had my say.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius, especially here on Conference Championship Sunday, where I believe we're looking at the 49ers have gone ahead of the Lions late in the fourth quarter. Anyway, we're looking at a Chiefs versus somebody Super Bowl. Thank you very much for joining us. Instead of watching that, we will see you next week, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Have a great week and a pleasant tomorrow and all that stuff. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off our lawn.
the individuals, but the collective. I do not question that each councilman has the best intentions in their hearts. I'm sure you do not like being called a thief. I was not saying any of you thieves outside this chamber. However, as a collective, this council in its deeds has proven to be just that. As a collective, this council, as with every government around the world, claims to have superior rights to which no individual has. As a collective, you can make anything illegal or legal. As a collective, you can take from one and give to another. As a collective, you can force all to comply to your will, no matter the protest of those under your rule. What would happen if you went to a constituent's house armed with a gun, demanded that they give you money for fire protection or economic development? At the very least, you would be labeled a thief. And at the worst, you might die of lead poisoning. Yep, you sure would if it were my house. As a member of the collective, you don't need a gun to personally rob your neighbor. The collective has a legion of enforcers to do the dirty work. Every one of them armed with good intentions. Your neighbors have no way to resist the theft, for to do so would ultimately end in their own death. Where do these collective rights come from? Scribbles on paper. Yep, sure do. I am told it is we who give consent to the collective, and it is we who gives this council the right to plunder and dictate our life. I never consented to any of this, yet I am told that somehow I did get above some of my liberty to this council, along with the state and federal leviathans, yet I can find no legally binding contract to which I am party. If we are government and the government is us, then it only stands to reason that anything the government does, we did to ourselves. The Jews of Nazi Germany were not murdered, but committed suicide, for they were the government. This council is me, and I am this council. When I speak to this council, I am speaking to myself. When this council votes to tax and spend, somehow I did it to myself. Thou shalt not lie, cheat, or steal unless you are a government. Thou shalt not have another God except government. Who is we? Thou shalt not worship idols unless they are government idols. Thou shalt not sacrifice your children unless to government. For government. Gentlemen, can you see there seems to be an exception to the 10 Commandments for this thing we call government?
Oh, he dropping some bombs out there.
Where did this exception come from? It is my belief that government is the manifestation of Satan through the minds and hands of men. Government is the most evil entity on the earth, without exception. There is no entity on the planet that has killed more people than government. All the murderers throughout history account for only a fraction of what governments have murdered in its name. And yet we believe this is a necessary evil. Why? Who would build the roads? The 10 Commandments only applies to individuals, you see. The 10 Commandments does not apply to a collective of individuals who constitute their own governance called government in whatever form they choose. Why? Who would build the roads? Governments recognize two sets of laws, one for the individual and another for itself. Individuals do not have the right to steal, but government can steal whatever it wants. Why? Who would build the roads? Every council member recognizes he has no right to steal from another individual, yet as a member of the collective, he can vote to steal all from all, yet in his mind, he does not see that theft as such. Instead, he sees the theft as proper and good. Why? Who would build the roads? At the beginning of every council meeting, you pray to God for guidance as you do the people's work. Notice it's not God's work, but the people's work. Why? Who would build the roads? You see, God doesn't build roads. I dare say every council member claims to be a follower of Jesus in his own life. Yet as a collective body, you don't act like Jesus would. Why? Who would build the roads? Satan has no physical power here on earth. Satan can't pick up a rock. He can't pick up a gun, nor can he abort a new life in a womb. Satan can't dig a ditch or build a house or a dam or murder on a massive scale. Nope, sure can't. Satan is helpless without the minds and hands of men. We call government the necessary evil. Why? Who would build the roads?
Man, this guy is spitting bar after bar. Yeah, but I doubt any of them care. He talking to a bunch of wicked people. But this message is gonna it's out there. So, you know, at least he gets to speak his piece. Let me not hold him up.
What happens to men when they accept they must use evil to do good? Evil consumes and controls their every action, deceiving them that the evil they do is good for all. Why? Who would build the roads? When we accept that evil is necessary, then evil, government, becomes the means to solve every problem as we see in every action this council takes. We must do this evil thing for the good of all. Why? Who would build the roads? Thou shalt not steal except for government. Why? Who would build the roads? Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He hath been a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, then he speaketh ye of his own. For he is a liar and the father thereof. John 8:44, the 1599 Geneva Bible. This scripture is a perfect description of government where evil is necessary for the good of all, which in fact is a lie. Government, all government constituted by man, is in fact born from the father of lies, and the deeds of its father it shall do. We accept this evil as being necessary, and we pledge our allegiance to it, even as we recognize it be under God's ultimate rule. We claim this evil to be blessed by God and not evil at all. We claim Uncle Sam is God's chosen to rule over us all. What Uncle Sam does is as if God has done. This government claims to be a child of God, yet acts like the child of Satan. What is wrong for the individual is right for government. We all know government is a liar. We all know government is a thief. We all know government is evil. Are we going to continue to do the deeds of our father, the devil, or shall we turn away from the evils and place our faith in the Lord?
I thank you very much. Y'all have a lovely evening.